Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is on the cusp of coming out. We are just under 3 months away from the game actually releasing, and I wanted to talk about a few things before we actually get into like the nitty-gritty of that. A lot of people have trouble trying to negate the grounds and find out like what's actually true and what's not. And I'm not here to talk about how to discern truth from fiction. I'm just here to talk about like my experience with online and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and how I tend to navigate those waters personally myself, and maybe this could work for you as well. So when I'm actually like on Twitter, or I'm just going through YouTube or something, or Instagram, I'll see a bunch of people claiming that something is official. For example, we have the newest official leak thing that we've been talking about, where somebody that worked on the game actually said in an interview that
you can cross over in different realms. You can have people from Dragon Ball fight people from Dragon Ball Super. You know, Jiren can fight Tao Pai Pai. You know, you can have anyone from the Red Ribbon Army fight against, I don't want to say Jiren again, but Vegeta. You know,
it's open season from all.
You can cross over.
That players like these types of games for the example of that you can have Jiren fighting Tao Pai Pai, I think he said, and just from that off-the-cuff statement, a lot of people have run with this and said that like Dragon Ball, like original Dragon Ball, is confirmed, and that doesn't exactly mean confirmed. This is a similar situation that I did when Sean Schemmel let it leak that like.
And keeping track of, I didn't realize that subtly changing the voice for every single form was going to bite me in the ass later. And so keeping track of all that for like Super Saiyan 4, Super Saiyan 3, God Mode Red Hair, God Mode, and it's all real subtle, different things, And so Damon has just been on top of just keeping all my references, everything in line, going through, making sure everything's right, really nitpicking it. It's a very challenging thing to do, but it's easy to solve as long as you keep vocal references.
His voice director was actually helping him remember all of the different ways that he did voices, and he mentioned Super Saiyan 4. This again doesn't confirm that GT is in the game. All of these things could possibly make sure that it's in the game. Like that doesn't make it not true that those things are not in the game. It just, the statements alone aren't enough evidence to confirm officially whether or not something is going to be in the game. So there's a couple different options. They could have A, misspoke, or B, know a lot more about the roadmap of the game and can be talking about future DLC, so they're just including in that, because when you're talking about like plans to make a game like this already knows all the characters that are going to be coming out in DLC, even the possible ones. Like if the DLC does well, then like they know what's going to happen in the next DLC, and all that's roadmapped and planned out like well before the game even really starts being produced. So there's a lot of things in there that like they already know. So people that are generally working on the game, it can become kind of a blur, and if they're not exactly sure about what's been officially announced yet and what they're allowed and are supposed to talk about, a lot of that stuff can get mixed up in the weeds, especially when you're not talking about somebody who's directly involved in the marketing and is usually out there giving promotional interviews about this kind of stuff. So I can understand these people are kind of getting things mixed up. Again, it does not deconfirm or delegitimize any of the statements that they made. It's just saying that the official title doesn't actually like fall to that. An official announcement would be something from actual Bandai Namco officially confirming that they're in the game, therefore being like you would get a trailer for like Kid Goku or something akin to that. The Kid Goku one's a weird one because people are now using other non-confirming sources, like saying, for example, oh, well, that's that blurry picture that we saw when they were showing the trailer for the story mode. We saw like Goku headbutting King Piccolo or something that we already knew was going to be in there. But like I said last time, that doesn't confirm the character is going to be in there. That can be a flashback story. Most of the time when we're talking about a roster for release, we're talking about characters that are covered within the game's story mode. Obviously, there could be differences or changes in DLC and pre-order bonuses and whatnot, but when it comes to the official base roster, it's usually story-related characters. And we already know that the story is going to be covered from the beginning of the Saiyan saga, which is where they battle Raditz, and up through Super, which is like the end of the Tournament of Power. So we know that those characters in that baseline are directly going to be characters that are in it. We already know that Dragon Ball Super Superhero is not included because that's in the first DLC, as well as Dragon Ball Daima. So we can assume that those characters are actually not going to be part of the story mode. So when we're talking about which characters are actually going to be in and what confirms this. Like I said, that picture that they saw of Goku could have just been a flashback or a story and not actually a playable part of the story because original Dragon Ball is not included in that. It starts with Raditz again. And the same thing goes with these voice actors' lines. We know GT is not a story in the game unless they actually come with story with the characters in their DLC packs, and we're not even 100% positive whether or not that's actually going to come as DLC. Like, we think it is, and I would postulate that it is, but like, I can't say that with any degree of certainty outside of like an official announcement like Bandai Namco telling me directly, pretty much. So again, with these people saying these things and then like passing it along, the hardest part to interact with is now seeing sources that you would trust take the same narrative and run with it. So if we're on Twitter, let's say Burkule or somebody like that is retweeting somebody or mentioning it himself or themselves, or Slow actually does it, Slow Plays, like anybody like does that same kind of generalizing where they hear something and they're excited, so they're using confirmation bias to just like run with that and kind of like use that as the main narrative that they're going to go with, and sometimes use the word officially incorrectly, misspeaking. A lot of people will run with that and go, because people will look at those people as authority figures and say, okay, well, if they said it, my favorite YouTuber or whatever, then it has to be true and it's going to confirm my own biases, and then further intensifies like the snowball effect that comes thereafter. And a lot of that is kind of detrimental, because false hype building can really hurt a game's reception when it launches. And what do I mean by that? For example, the idea of the game, like I said, is already played out. Bandai Namco and Spike Chunsoft already have the entire timeline for this game mapped out directly. Nothing that we say or do is going to change any of that, because the game's already pretty much done at this point. With like less than 3 months out, they're just working on finishing up graphical touches and bug fixes and stuff like that. They're not like adding any new content to the game at this point. The game's pretty much gold, so it's not really likely that they're going to add any of that stuff. So whatever we say on Twitter is not really going to change that. But I will say that if you're expecting GT to be in the game, or original Dragon Ball, or movies, or any slew of other things, like let's like take something that's definitely not going to be in the game, the Granola arc, right? So let's say your favorite character from Dragon Ball Super is Granola, and you want him to be in Tenkaichi 4 Sparking Zero really bad, just because of the fact that one of your favorite YouTubers postulated that it's a possibility that we could get them as DLC some point down the road. Now, this is in no way a true statement, so you're hype building yourself up in your head, and you're talking to your friends about it, and you're tweeting about it, and you're retweeting the other tweets that people are tweeting, and it becomes a cycle. All in all, Granola is never going to come to the game, and then like you're upset because your favorite character, which you thought was going to be in the game, is no longer in the game, and it puts a negative connotation of the game in your mouth, which isn't the game's fault. Like I said, they already did their thing. You're taking a misinterpretation of what the game actually is, building it up in your head, and then expecting it. And that usually is what leads to downfall when your enjoyment factor is coming in. I've said it a lot, like I love GT, and like GT is like usually like the #1 characters that I actually use in these Dragon Ball games, and the fact that I've had them since the PlayStation 1, and with Dragon Ball GT Final Bout that being, and that we don't actually have like Super Saiyan 4s in the game that are confirmed, like for me, if I were to run with all these tweets with Sean Schemmel's quote, and then everybody like postulating that it's going to be in there, or looking at the unconfirmed 164 spaces being like there's still room, here's where they can go, we can see that all of those are changing. Like Globku actually does probably the best I've seen with actually putting in the characters in those 164 slots and finding room and ways to fit them in. And you can see that even with his character predictions, the ones that are in there, he gets a lot of stuff correct, but he also gets a lot of stuff wrong, and even his hype for GT being in the game is diminishing over time. And I just personally can't see them adding like 1 or 2 characters from a series to represent an entire series. It's more likely that they would hold off on that and just save it for later and have all of it come in one package. Like I don't think they're gonna just have like Omega Shenron and Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, like I said, unless you have like an Ultimate Tenkaichi situation, which was also Spike Chunsoft, or Spike actually, because they weren't with Chunsoft yet. So I can see where that line of thinking could go, but in a game like this, where we're talking about the characters are probably going to be part of the story mode, I don't see how that's happening, and I don't want to build myself up with false hype in order to get excited for something and then get mad at the company later for them actually not living up to the expectations of the game that I had built up in my head, if that makes sense, because it's not their fault that I built up this kind of like weird thing in my head about how something is. It's kind of like, a weird example would be if you're talking to somebody online that you're interested in, and you're talking to this person, you're getting super excited to meet them, and that meeting time is coming up, but you've still never seen what they look like, and you build up the version of this character, this person that you want in your head, what you would expect them to look like. And then you would think that you're getting catfished if you show up and that person doesn't look anything like you thought that they looked. And this is not actually the person's fault. unless like you specifically ask for a picture and they catfish you, the version that you have of that person built up in your head caused your own hype to go through the roof. And then when you're faced with reality, you realize that you're mad at the person instead of you're mad at yourself. Because a lot of people don't like to take accountability for things. When we're taking these statements to heart and we are building up this false set of things in our head and talking about our friends to it, I've seen this run rampant even on my own Discord, or even on Twitter or Instagram, or speaking with my friends just over the phone, or when we're playing games online, something like that. Chances are that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is not going to be revealed. Like, a good example are the trailers that have come out so far. I know Ragaroth was talking about this when the Sword versus Fist trailer actually came out. It's like, well, that's the perfect time to show Janemba. So if Janemba's actually included actually in the game, he would definitely be a part of that trailer, right? It's like, yeah, he probably would be, because they've used any excuse to like throw in characters with swords or whatever just to put in there. I don't really want to put the blame solely on us, because the marketing teams that are promoting this game are promoting it in a certain way of like having a scientific way to build hype naturally until the game's release. But how many more trailers are we possibly going to get before we can finally start saying that maybe those things that we thought were factual and official, that were stretches, are actually just saving things for later, or actually part of another kind of explanation? You can't just rule out everything and expect like your way to trump facts, you know? So all in all, I'm in there at the same boat with you. I'm super excited about this game. I really hope that all my dreams come true with this game. I hope it's the best Dragon Ball game ever, but the fact that I'm pushing for a base game to have everything that I want is kind of on me if I'm disappointed by any of that. So I just think we should take some time to reflect, and every time we see one of these things, trying to reel back our hype a little bit and look at it with an analytical lens and be like, is this really official? Is this really something? Let me do my due diligence and actually try to research what's going on specifically with this one claim, instead of just like, you know, overhyping myself. But those are just my thoughts, and any and all comments that you want to share with me, please do so in the comment section down below or on the Discord. But before we end the video, I want to get to the last poll on the last video. Do you believe it is fair to compare Dragon Ball games that exist in different genres? 12% of people said it's fair. 44% of people, which is the overwhelming majority, said only within genres, which an example would be like you would compare Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 to like Dragon Ball Tenkaichi because it's in the same genre. It's not fair at all, 7%, and 37% said who the F cares. That was like, I always have like a jokey kind of one in my polls, and this one came pretty close to second. So this is out of a pool of 332 votes, and you can actually see the comments on the screen as we're discussing it right now. And that is going to be the video for today, guys. I want to thank you guys for watching. Any ways that you can like share and like the video are always going to be super appreciated. I appreciate you. Consider joining the channel's membership, join the Yoon-Fam, and there's a lot of perks that are good. And check me out on the other social media. And as I always say, guys, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.
Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon, so should you. Enjoy your treat!